When life throws you a curveball, how are you going to handle adversity? Welcome to the Fearless Mindset Podcast, where you're about to go on a journey as I interview security, business, and entertainment leaders on what it takes to stay fearless. I'm your host, Mark Ludlow, and enjoy today's episode. What has that done for, from a business perspective? What has that done to you as an author? Has it put you in a different plateau to where people look at you differently, treat you differently? How's that experience been for you since then?
Yes. So the thing about being an author, a published author, is that it gives you what I call third-party validation. You know, the minute someone learns about you and has an interest in you, what do? They Google you. So they Google you and they want to see, about you. And what happens is if you have that book and it exists out there and it's in Barnes and Nobles or Amazon and all of this, the other piece of that is it shows that one, that you have something to say. But then when people look at the reviews of the book, and hopefully they're favorable and hopefully they're accurate, but they look at that and they go, well, people found value from what this individual was trying to say. Mm-hmm. So I should give them my ear. And so I think that's a great thing. So again, it goes into my mantra of having a soft sell. I don't need to tell you how cool I am. I would rather someone else tells you that,
absolutely,
hey, this guy's cool, and so having
more
the
power
book,
and edification by other people.
That's exactly it. But I'm giving them an object, something that will help reinforce that or help legitimize that. And so, plus it makes for a great gift. If you got a client or a potential client and, you just put that in the mail, and they get it on their desk and they go, wow, okay, this guy must know what he's talking about. And so those were the things that were kind of the driving force behind that. Again, I brought out the first book 2 years ago now. The hardest thing that I have is my schedule, because I work operationally in the field. So I'm gone a lot. I travel quite a bit. What people like to do, I'm sorry, I should probably mention this to your listeners. I teach a course on celebrity and VIP protection. The issue I have is because I travel so much, because I work operationally, I can't put on the course as often as I would like. And so, of course, that's disappointing to people. And financially, I'd be better if I put the course on, 6 times a year as opposed to 2 times a year. Well, now I'm able to say, hey, I'm not able to do the course, but here's the book. And so people are able to find value from that. I've got, just a couple of weeks ago, a guy from Nigeria messaged me.
Nice.
And he wanted to come and take the class. I've got a class in February, but financially he just can't do it. And, I was able to point him to the book. Hey, here's the book. You can learn a lot of things out of it. You can absorb that. And, in a year from now, you want to come down, we'd be happy to have you. And so I think being a published author allows you to do things like that.
Have you been on any TV shows, or do you get invited to be guest speakers of anything beyond? I know you're with ESI quite a bit. Do you have any other projects?
I get a ton of invites, although I don't accept many of them. But again, part of that is just because of my operational schedule. It's very hard for me to do some things, to move around. For a while, I was really heavy into media, meaning I did an active campaign in terms of getting placements in media. So I had articles and interviews with Forbes magazine, with Fortune magazine. I had a write-up in Inc. magazine, and I spoke on talk shows. But that was a strategic, coordinated effort to build my brand.
How did that work?
When I got my brand where I wanted it to be,
sure,
then it was like, okay, well, I don't necessarily know the point of that. And so now what I do is I do things like this. I talk to people that I like to talk to, that I have a relationship with, or I find, engaging, and I want to support them. And so all the things I do now, well, a lot of the things, the majority of the things I do now are by choice, and they're intentional. And so then, if I do an interview in a paper, let's see, the last thing that somebody was talking to me about was, whenever XYZ celebrity gets in trouble, I'll get a call from a media outlet. And the problem with that is that even if I say something, hopefully I'm saying the right thing, but even if I'm saying something that's not controversial, that's not scandalous, that's not violating a client's confidentiality, the writer can do what they want with that. And part of that is, even if they do a direct quote from me, if they put me in that article with 5 or 6 other people who maybe don't have that same degree of confidentiality or ethics or whatever, then I get painted with that brush. And so I say all to say is that, press is a wonderful thing, but being able to have your own voice, having a podcast, writing a book, even a blog post, telling the story the way you wanted to tell it, that's where I see the value in.
Wow. That's you have a PR company, Elijah Shaw, publications, Forbes, Fortune, the icon of Elijah Shaw.
Don't get me wrong. I thought it was amazing when Portfolio magazine flew me to New York City.
That's huge.
It was amazing. And, my mom really loved it. But
that's no joke.
Yeah, but I don't. I mind that for what I wanted out of it, which was, again, to help build a business. And to that point, though, to circle that back, when I talked about that client that I worked with that I took to China, while they were doing their due diligence, their research, those were the articles that they came across.
Wow.
Again, that third-party validation.
Yep.
So they went online. It wasn't them looking at my website, because of course my website is going to speak glowingly. It was them doing the research and seeing where my name popped up at. So there is definitely there's a strategy, but again, it has to be strategic.
Very strategic.
Yeah.
That's good advice to the listeners. If you're trying to break into business, the EP industry, bodyguard world, as you can tell, it's very tricky. You got to pay your dues, and Elijah's been at it since 1989.
Oh, I started in 91.
91. Okay.
Yeah, 91.
And I got it in later. I was in the Marine Corps, did my thing, and I think I broke in right when the 2008 crash hit. I got in.
Okay. All right.
And I used to be a banker, then I got in. So there's so much knowledge and value. I mean, if you want to break in, I suggest read Elijah's book, reach out to him, attend his course at ESI, and his time is very limited. I'm lucky to get him on right now because I know he had a conflict with the client coverage and all that. So
yeah, we were supposed to jump on earlier today and had to push that, but I'm glad we were able to jump on. I enjoyed the podcast, and hopefully your listeners get a little bit out of what I was saying. I didn't put them to sleep. But
no, I think this is a very engaging conversation. It's a lot of gold nuggets and all that. And for the people listening, this is Elijah Shaw, owner of Icon. He's been in the business a long time, and he's co-authored of a book and an author of another book. And if you're listening, he's just been in Forbes, Fortune magazine, and he knows how to publicize himself, and he knows branding very well, in addition to being a bodyguard. Where can people find you, Elijah?
Got you. Well, I'm pretty ubiquitous on social media. So if you've got the LinkedIn, the Facebooks, the Instagrams, the Twitter, and you type in my name, it'll go to one of those mail boxes. My website is www.industry-icon.com. So shoot me a message. Again, I'm active in the field. I'm on the road. But with that said, I try and respond back to everybody. Sometimes not as quick as I'd like to, but if people have a legitimate question or want to talk about something, or if I can help them out with something, I try to as often as I can.
Great. Yeah, I just want to get that out there for the audience listening. And I want to get some more information out of you for the audience too, if you have enough time. How are you looking for time, Elijah?
I'm okay. Sure.
Okay, cool. We'll keep rolling. We got some good gold nuggets coming out of this. What is your advice to all the guys that want to be high profile Jason Bournes out there, EP agents in the United States of America?
Sure.
What is the reality of working EP in America? I mean, so many people have this misclaim or misnomer that it's something that is really not the United States. What's your advice to the young men and women out there that want to be where you've been?
For sure. So I coined this phrase, and I call it real world versus textbook. And by textbook, I mean, what someone's, black and white, written down, by the numbers idea of what close protection is, and then there's the real world. And the two are different. Now, it's great to learn the textbook. It's great to understand, to be proficient in firearms and to have a black belt and and all of those cool things. Learn how to do a J turn but the reality is, and what we do, it's a lot of pre-planning. It's a lot of what we call advanced work. It's a lot of logistics. There's a lot of sitting around and waiting. And if you can master those things, which sounds strange when I say master sitting around and waiting, because there is there's a technique to do that, to do it well, because nothing happens, and then Murphy's Law, something happens, and we have to react and engage professionally and measurably. And so if you can learn those things, you can be successful in this industry. The problem is people put an emphasis on, I used it earlier, the sizzle. They put an emphasis on the guns and ammo and how proficient they are with the blade and all these things, which I love that. However, those don't necessarily translate to what we do day in and day out domestically when you're working an assignment. And so if nothing else, I want to encourage people to have balance. If you're going to spend all of your days at the range, but none of your days, listen to podcasts or reading about, etiquette, whether it's in the boardroom or the restaurant, when you're with that client and you go into one of these environments, you're not going to know how to act. And I challenge anyone to tell me the amount of times they've used their firearm domestically defending their client successfully. I challenge people, and it's not to say that that hasn't happened, but I'll say it's a lot more likely that the client is going to be in traffic, late for their flight, and ask you to make alternate arrangements for that.
True.
And
so true.
And if you don't know how to do that piece, if you can't realize that, okay, I've got to navigate from Manhattan to JFK in this amount of time, and if I miss this flight, I've got to figure out how to rebook them on this flight. And if we miss that, then we're going to have to catch an Uber. But do I take a high profile client in an Uber? Those are the things that are the essence of the job that protectors do day in and day out. And so if you learn those things, I see much more longevity in the business.
Great advice. Yeah, great advice. That's so true. Like I can remember here, I can't name the client, but my buddy Tony Rodriguez was covering the client. The jet was waiting, and this client's request was he wanted a hot hamburger from McDonald's, cheeseburger, I think it was, and a Coke. And he was actually waiting in this private jet over at I think it was Van Nuys or maybe LAX Signature Airport. And they sent Anthony out to find a McDonald's that was open at the crack of dawn. Well, they don't open until 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. And he's sitting in the jet. And he had to get resourceful, and he offered, I think, the manager at McDonald's like $500 for McDonald's. Like, oh, I can't accept that. And then he goes, well, then he had to say, well, who's this for? If it's so important, who's this for? And he goes, hey, it's for XYZ. And they go, really? He wants a hamburger from McDonald's before he flies out in French fries. That's what he wants. And I'm out here. I think he hit 5 McDonald's, and this is the last one he hit. He goes, I can't go back with empty-handed. I can't go back empty-handed. How am I going to make this happen? And so they actually made a McDonald's, hamburger and all that. It took about a half hour. And I think he slipped her a couple $100 for it. Probably the most money she's ever made for making a hamburger. And it was a simple request like that, customer service.
But think about that. So to some people, that might sound outrageous or unbelievable, but that's a normal day when you're dealing with these high net worth individuals. And what basically that amounted to was problem solving. That's what I see myself doing quite a bit is, every day is problem solving. Now, sometimes those problems, are of large magnitude and, but most time it's minor things. But the reason why they fall on us is because we're usually with that particular VIP day in and day out. sometimes more than their spouse is. And so when they turn to their left or to their right and they see Elijah, they see Mark, naturally all of those things will default to them.
Mhm.
And it's up to us, it'll default to us. And it's up to us to figure out how to handle that without compromising safety or security. And so I think that's the challenge, because people will go overboard. They'll take the customer service side
Right.
and go so far overboard that they neglect the security concerns that go along with that. So the big piece is finding that balance.
Absolutely. Hey, I want to get your commentary on that shooting that took place during Super Bowl weekend down in, I think it was Beverly Hills at the
Mhm.
Good Boy Father Brothers restaurant or something. I guess Justin
Mhm.
Bieber was there or something. It was some shootout or something that happened. Do you know much detail on that?
I just know a little bit about it, but I think the interesting thing was, which speaks to the challenge everybody has, is Justin Bieber didn't have anything to do with this. Justin Bieber's
Okay.
security didn't have anything to do with this. But
Okay.
they're always going to lead. The headline is always going to be, the most popular person in the area, in the environment. And so, my takeaway from that always is that we've got to make sure that we protect the client, but we've also got to their person, but we've also got to make sure that we protect their brand. And that's an extremely difficult thing to do as well. And so even if, my client is this VIP and I know I've got him secure in this room,
Mm-hmm.
as long as I can see him, he's fine. But I do need to pay attention to what else is happening in the venue. What's their security like? What's it look like outside? What's the police presence? And the reason is because if something like this were to happen, I know that the headline is going to list my client's name, even though he has nothing to do with it. And so the takeaway for me from situations like that is, even though it might not directly involve us, we do want to have some type of input, even if the input is just in the form of questions for the local security and the event planners in terms of what they're doing in order to keep the overall environment safe. We talk about close protection. We talk about these concentric rings, this inner ring, which is right next to the VIP, and this middle ring, which is pushed out some, and then the outer ring. And so there are times with individuals in our industry, we just focus on the inner ring. And that's doing us a disservice. We've got to make sure that those other rings, even if they're not on our budget, that we have some involvement and some input. And again, even if that just comes in asking these probing questions to make them think like, oh, maybe we should be doing this. Maybe we should hire another uniformed police officer to be at the front of the building. Those things I think are important as well.
What is your what's your perceived thoughts on the next 9 months here in the U.S.? We got midterm elections coming up. Is your clients reaching out for different type of requests? Are they looking to fortify their homes? Mm-hmm. Are they nervous with inflation? What's their biggest fear right now that you're hearing from?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely depends on which client types, because I work with a variety of them. But I think everyone is a bit uncertain about what post-COVID means. Is there a new variant that comes out? For the entertainers, is this touring happening? For my corporate clients, can we return to the office? Can we have board meetings? So that's where the big concerns are.
Sure.
And then, to your point, without getting too deep into the woods here, things are much more politicized, and the lines are drawn, much more distinct than they were in the past.
Sure.
And so, and part of that might just be media selling stories that are sensationalized,
sure.
Or it just might be just where we're at as a society.
Right.
But because of that, as we come into midterms, or as different trials make their way through the court systems, or different crimes make national attention, there is a concern that things could flare up. And so depending where you are geographically, depending on where you stand on the political spectrum, depending on where you are in your organization in terms of, are you the head of an organization that could be deemed by one group or another controversial or disliked, you could have much more exposure. And so a lot of the conversations that are happening now on my end is making sure that we have contingency planning in place, and that's contingency for COVID. That's contingency for, if there's a trucker strike and all of a sudden the supply chain is affected, or just travel is affected. So again, a big part of what we do is that planning, is that threat mitigation, and it's also forecasting. It's thinking about, I was just looking at the book I wrote with Dale, and one of the things that Dale kind of hammers in on is he plays the what if game a lot. If this happens, what do I do? If this happens, what do I do? You don't necessarily share that with the client because you don't want to be an alarmist, but us as protectors, we should be doing it all the time. Just playing that, if this happens, and it could be outrageous scenarios, but what would you do? If there was a zombie outbreak, is your go bag packed by the door? Do you have things in it that you can survive? And it's nothing to say that can't, playing that what if game can't be fun.
Sure.
But it should be realistic, and it should be very telling, those self-checks and go, oh, maybe I'm not ready for this. So let me do these things to get ready.
Should you bring that up? Because I just went down and I have a place in Sacramento, residency in Sacramento, and I just went and renewed my CCW down there. And I'm like, I got this is renewed. This is my livelihood. This is what I do,
Sure.
And I'm like thinking, okay, midterm elections coming up. I got these clients coming on board. I got my general counsel. We're doing contracts as we speak. I'm on the phone with them all the time. And you gotta schedule. You gotta know when your expiration dates are on your permits. And if you're trying to break in the industry, I would recommend Texas is a hot spot right now. So is Florida. And if all where business goes, that's where the protection is going to be needed. So California will always be a hot spot because there's so much wealth there. They're always going to have homes there because they vacation there, like the weather. And then, but Texas, Florida, I think we're not going to have any issues having enough work. I think it's going to be, there's so much going on. And if you're following the news, a girlfriend of mine just called me, hey, you watching Ukraine right now? Putin's going to invade. Okay, well, yeah, probably so, because he wants an oil pipeline. He wants that money. Of course, he's going to probably invade. And so people go, oh, how's it going to affect us as a country? Well, I'm sure it'll affect us one way or another. It always does. There's always cause and effects with when people are foreign, like Putin's going to invade Ukraine. I'm sure there's going to be a cause and effect on how you tour, how are you going to travel. You're going to probably avoid certain airspace because you don't want to get missile hit in your C-130 as you're flying over to Italy to do a job or whatever. And so there's always things we got to, like you say, you're right, you got to forecast, got to be very aware of what's going on around the world. That's why they have intel analysts that study all this stuff as it's going. I know we both know Kristen Lenderson over at Crisis 24. She's the VP of Intel over there, and she runs a 500 person. Maybe the number is wrong. Maybe it's not 500, but she runs a really large organization. Their job is to keep their clients safe globally.
Sure.
It's just amazing to me how the industry's evolved from just not bodyguard, but we have like people like Michael Trott, former CIA, and he wrote The Protected, and that's so much more intelligence apparatus. And now the people are getting smarter because you have social media, and you have these kids of very wealthy families posting everything. They put themselves on target. Oh, I'm here at the Beverly Wilshire having dinner. We're here right now. Guess what? You guys looking for, boom, they show up. They rob them. And so intelligence is such a key importance of what we do now. It didn't used to be, but now it's become accepted. What's your thoughts on the intelligence apparatus part of our industry?
Well, I think it creates it creates an equalizer for people that are interested in getting in the industry, because intelligence is size neutral, age neutral, gender neutral. So all of those excuses that you could say, oh man, I can't break into the close protection industry. I can't break into the executive protection industry because I'm this. There's an aspect to it that you can,
Sure.
And so I like to say, pick the right tool for the job. And so if you say, okay, well, I'm 4 foot tall, maybe I'm not going to protect NBA athletes. Okay, that's fine. But I've got really strong computer skills. There you go.
Yep.
I've got a background as a private investigator where I was doing, looking around for married spouses. Oh, so you know how to do a lot of research, so those are things that you can use to your advantage. And so, I referenced Sam Alisi, who works for me, and one of Sam's gifts is the ability to conduct very, very thorough research on the countries. And so I mentioned how much I travel internationally.
Yeah.
As I plan these trips operationally, he's in the background, okay, what's the current temperature at the country? Meaning like, where are they at politically? Where are they at from the climate? Where are they at in terms of crime? And putting these things together. And he'll create these folders, one for me, and that tells the entire story.
Wow.
And an abbreviated version for our clients that we can share with them. And so that's a skill that he does, and he doesn't have to leave, his family at the house. And so these are things that
interesting.
Again, you could have an injury where you're missing a foot and do this.
Absolutely.
So you talk about, we talked about before the show started. You said you have a lot of people from the military that listen to your show. And of course, if if you're a disabled veteran, there are areas in our industry that you can excel in. They might not be as forward facing as the things you see on TV all the time, but they're areas that people in the know find great value in. I was just talking to someone with a Fortune 100 company, and she was looking for candidates. And the candidates that she was looking for, she's a security manager. The candidates that she was looking for, the skills that she wanted were these computer skills, these research skills. And she wasn't talking to me about firearms. She wasn't talking to me about, ninjutsu, and so I thought that was great. Now, when the posting goes up, people are going to apply for it. But if your resume is, just how well you shoot, are your great sniper skills, you're not going to be the candidate she's going to pick. Right. I'm not going to say her name because I don't want to get her email flooded with people.
Roger that. I mean, that's great points, Elijah. This was so true. I didn't even think about the intelligence side. And like, if you're a disabled vet, you can work from home.
For sure.
Do intel for Elijah or any other organization that needs intel. You don't have to be CIA or FBI. I mean, they actually, there's, I know ONTIC has a protective intelligence course that they actually do. I don't know the details. You have to reach out to Fred Burton, who's been on the show as well, and reach out to them or many other organizations that probably teach you how to do intel. That's something I'm thinking about getting into myself, because I see that as the future of what we do. And I see robotics and technology basically taking over the bodyguard piece eventually, because we're expensive, but if you get technology, is half the price. So Elijah, share with me a little bit of your thoughts on technology taking over the bodyguard role. I saw, I think it was LA Universal did a big old piece about they have these robots, the future bodyguards, robocops running around. Like, okay, what can they really do? What's your thoughts on the
Well,
robots?
It was interesting. I was just part of a forum that discussed that very topic here. And so, I think where I came down on the issue is that there's always going to be a need for protectors.
Yeah.
Physical, flesh and blood protectors.
Sure.
However, the size of the workforce is going to get minimized because technology is going to introduce the help. And one of the examples that I can give you is that if you are doing estate security, and that estate, you might have 8 guys that work, though, depending on the size of the estate. Right. There might be 2 entrances, and you got guys that are doing foot patrol, and you got guys that are monitoring the camera, and someone to be relief for them. So you could have 8 guys working for that. As technology increases, as we start getting these drones that can operate in low light, and you see some of the even in shopping malls now, they've got these droids that can roam around, but essentially they're just an extra set of eyes.
Absolutely.
And so once you have that, then it's like, well, do I need 8 guys? And again, I'm speaking from the client's perspective here.
Right.
If I make the initial investment of $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 on this piece of hardware,
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, here's the salary that I'm paying a protector. Maybe I can
Yep.
scale that piece back, particularly when I can take out the health insurance, policy that I have to pay the guy, the per diem that I might have to pay the guy, depending on where we're traveling, et cetera. So I think it's going to be a hybrid of both.
Interesting.
Technology is going to help us, but we're also going to have issues with it because it's going to take away some jobs. And so I think your approach is the one that I would favor, which is get ahead of the curve,
Right.
learn these things to the degree that that we can learn them. Some of this stuff is going to be over our heads, but be involved in that so that way when the client has to make that decision, or the team leader needs to make that decision on who he's keeping and who's leaving. Oh, I'm going to keep the guy who's on board with this, because just like everything else, I remember when I started in the MySpace days in terms of having a social media presence
Holy
in
crap.
executive protection. Yeah.
Holy smokes.
And that transition into Facebook. And in the beginning,
Sure.
there were old school guys that just couldn't stand that.
No.
There's no way you could be on social media, that you can't be talking about the clients. You can't have a picture yourself because we're supposed to be these secret squirrel guys, etc. And
Right.
now, if you don't have a social media presence, you're a dinosaur. You don't exist. Of which someone goes, there must be something wrong with them. This must be a scam,
Right.
or this, a fly-by-night corporation. So I said it to say is, this is where what's happening is that we have to adapt. We have to, be able to figure out how to meet our objectives and let technology work for us, not against us.
Yeah, well said, Elijah. I remember those days. I remember hearing those conversations.
Yeah.
And, I study people. I like to study to learn what makes that person tick. And you and Byron Rogers have pushed guerrilla marketing like no other. I mean, kudos to you guys for doing what you did, because the young people are feeding that. They want to learn. And the old way of doing security, the old guard they're retiring, they're leaving the industry. And the young generation, they want that education that you and Byron have done so well of packaging together.
Thank you. Well, yeah, and I think to your point, if there aren't outlets that are available for it, then people are stumbling in the dark. So, right. and again, there's nothing wrong with the traditional ways of doing business. However, you're not going to reach all segments of the marketplace.
Nope.
And if as an industry we
right.
want to grow, we need to make sure that we're touching all segments of the marketplace. And so the analogy that I use is there's McDonald's and there's Morton Steakhouse.
Yep.
But they both sell meat.
Right.
And Morton Steakhouse can turn its nose up at McDonald's,
yep.
but McDonald's has billions and billions served. So they have their own clientele. And McDonald's could say, well, hey, our sandwiches are only $1, but Morton's selling $100 steak. But they've got clientele
yep.
that wants that. And so anyway, I that was a roundabout way of saying that there are spaces in the marketplace for everyone.
There is.
And we should be able to, just like any other economics, supply and demand, we should be able to meet that demand with something that's quality. And so as long as someone is delivering quality, I'm supportive of it in whatever format it comes in.
Amen, brother. Yeah. Yeah, I've learned a lot over the last 8 years. I mean, I remember the days when I had conversations with many, many people, and when you were breaking through and doing your thing, I heard your name, and then you kept on pushing yourself, pushing your brand, and now you're a global brand now. And it took a lot of work on your end. It wasn't easy. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and getting people to trust you.
A few arrows I had to dodge, but
Of course. My 10 funerals, your arrows you had to dodge. I mean, envy comes from all shapes and forms and sizes, but you're going to the bank and cashing that check, and the people that were skeptical, guess what? They're probably not even in the business anymore. But you're doing what you love. You're doing what you passionately love to do, and that's in your DNA is to protect people. And I'm going to ask you another question. Can you tell a story of a moment in your life in this career in which you were in fear of your life, didn't know if you're going to make it home?
Do you have any stories that you could share that would be just something that would make people have a learning experience from you?
Well, I need to save that one for the autobiography that I'm going to do, right? So,
there you go.
but I definitely have been in some situations that have been pretty dicey. And I think, without going into kind of specifics,
sure,
one of the things that I did was I made sure I learned from all of those experiences. And so at the end of it, in our industries, we do an after action. So we take a look at what went right, but we also take a look at what went wrong. And those things, I found that the things that went wrong are the things I learned most from. And so I can think about, there were times where I was in situations where it was the universe that pulled me out of that safely, pulled me and the client out of that safely. The universe was working in my favor. But with that said, now I've got the lesson from that. When I'm in a similar situation, I can apply that and say, okay, now do this. And I know I'm being a little bit vague in terms of the question that you asked, but
there's reason for that.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a reason for that, and most of it could because the instances that I'm talking about, the instances I'm talking about, you can tie right back into individuals, etc. But sure. But I will say that if you've been in the business for any length of time, mm-hmm. at a high degree, working with a certain degree or a certain level of client, you're going to encounter something.
Absolutely.
Now, a lot of times when you read about it in the paper, it's when things have gone wrong.
Absolutely.
And true. so the sweet spot, the thing that we strive for is that something's going to go wrong, but when it goes wrong, can we mitigate that? Can we get out on the other side of that? Can we make sure that the client is comfortable on the other side and they understand, okay, this happened. This happened, and now we're going to learn from it. It's unavoidable. I think about all of the dicey parts of the world that I've been in that would accompany, the stories that you're talking about. I can, being in Palestine, when there's challenges in that part of the world that were ongoing. Even being in Beijing for that trip that we talked about, that I brought up a couple of times here, an associate of the client was murdered 2 days before we get off the plane.
Whoa!
In Beijing, and the authorities called it a random killing. Now, we didn't put too much stock in that, but just imagine how that changed the profile of what we were doing. Just by the time we got on the ground,
Sure.
Being in South Africa with some of the challenges that are happening there, being in Haiti with some of the challenges that are happening there. So again, I rattle off these places because all of these environments are kind of dicey or have the potential to be kind of dicey. So if something were to go wrong, we have to plan on it and we have to figure out how to come out on the other side of that successfully.
So obviously, it sounds like you run your operations almost like the Secret Service does, and their protocol, doing advances. You have Plan A, you Plan B, and Plan C, and above as well as Plan D. You have to have contingencies. When that stops, okay, we gotta go that overcome and adapt. Like we do the military.
Well, and to your point, and it's interesting that you even said it because no one's asked me that in a format like this, which was yes. So our motto is the Secret Service model, adapted to the private sector, adapted to smaller budgets, adapted to the particular type of client. So it's not as transparent.
Sure.
Someone might not make that analogy. It's very interesting that you say that. So those are the things, because when I talk about real world versus textbook, the gold standard, particularly in protective services, is United States Secret Service. So Absolutely. They wrote the textbook. Now I have to take that and apply that to the real world and say, we don't have those types of budgets. That would be
No.
overkill for the client to put those types of things in, however, those fundamental principles, those things we should be able to do because they have quantifiable value. And now that we have that, it'll make the detail run smoother. And so, and that's what I'm trying. So when you mention, me being in this space, Byron Rogers being in this space, the whole thing is that we're communicating to a younger generation or people that are new. We're communicating in a way that they want to hear things, but hopefully we're doing it with the same foundational principles that make people successful in terms of if there is an engagement, if there's a crisis, how they can mitigate that. And all of that stuff comes from the lessons that, the Secret Service, or the lessons that diplomatic security, or the lessons that, people that have worked these PSD details that have been able to live to tell about it have given. So I'm not reinventing the wheel. I'm just taking that and adapting that to the marketplace that I work in and that I work in and that I communicate with people in.
It's kept you alive this long, so it works.
Knock on wood.
Knock on wood. Yeah, interestingly, I had John Schumann just dropped yesterday. For you guys listening, he's a retired Secret Service. He's actually an instructor, former head of security for U.S. Bank, and he talks a lot about protocol. And there's those things they did risk assessment, threat assessment. That's what they kind of do. And anyway, so it's interesting how you were able to tailor those SOPs and tailor it to your business and be able to provide that ultimate security product overseas and internationally.
Yeah, bro, that's as I was trying to find myself and find my identity and create my niche, my big piece was trying to deal with the clients that I deal with a high degree of professionalism, but not overkill, to be able to work with them without being overpowering, letting them be able to exist in the environments that they exist in, particularly in the entertainment sector. If you go in there heavy-handed and you don't allow an entertainer to interact with the fans or the general public because, security says you have to be here or you have to do this, you're not going to last long. So the best thing is to figure out what their objectives are and have a plan in place to be able to meet those objectives, but keeping them as safe as possible.
There you go, folks. Well, thanks. I know, Elijah, you got time, you got things to attend to, clients to run after and all that. And thanks for your time. And thanks for sharing all these gold nuggets. And folks, this is Elijah Shaw. I'm sure you guys who don't know him, that you're listening to this and your corporate LinkedIn folks, followers, he's done some things, and check him out. Just Google his name, Elijah Shaw. It will come up. And we'll be dropping this podcast in probably about 3 weeks. And then Elijah will be putting it on his platform. I'll be putting my platform. It's just a ton of gold nuggets. And we're lucky we had it on for an hour, 22 minutes. So we'll probably splice this to 2 episodes, 1 hour, first episode, second episode will be about 22 minutes. And we'll just give you guys some great content and some stuff you guys can bank on. If you want to get in the industry, a lot of gold nuggets as far as advanced work. He gives you a lot of tips on how to survive globally, what he did. And any parting comments, advice you have for the audience, Elijah?
I really enjoyed the conversation. We touched on some things that I normally don't end up talking about on podcasts just because nobody asked me the question. So that was refreshing. But I think the thing that I would like to say is that the format, the ability to be able to listen to a podcast while you're driving to work or driving your kids to school or you're at the gym, it's invaluable. And this is that new tech that we were talking about,
It is.
And it's great for people that are, in our industry, but it's also great because you can take things that we talk about. And again, I'm speaking from a person who listens to your podcasts when I'm not on it, but you can take things that are discussed there and you can apply them to different industries, different businesses and different areas of life. And it doesn't cost anybody anything. It's free game. So soak it up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for being a subscriber and a listener to the show. as you know, Elijah, it's about the guests like yourself that I bring on that people want to hear. They want to hear their story. And I've been fortunate to have some amazing guys like yourselves on it. Byron's been on it, and some Navy SEALs and some amazing people. And because of that, I've learned more than I could ever imagine by putting this together. So, yeah, with that said, thanks for your time, Elijah. Thanks for supporting us. And, well, I'm sure we'll be collaborating on some stuff in the future. So thanks,
Yeah,
folks.
for sure. Absolutely.
Thanks for subscribing to YouTube, folks. And please add this to your subscriber on YouTube. And I'm on Mark Ludlow on Instagram. Elijah's on Instagram. You can find us on Twitter, all that stuff too. So thanks again for supporting the show. And we'll be back soon, folks. And we'll talk soon.